Hi, and welcome to MindSet, an HCD vidcast, where we dive into the world of applied consumer neuroscience and market research with leading experts in the field. My name is Michelle Nigella, PhD in behavioral neuroscience and Director of Research and Innovation at HCD.
And I'm Kathryn Ambrose, the Manager of Behavioral and Marketing Sciences with HCD. As your hosts, we are going to act as the buzzkills for the buzzwords, taking time to critically think about the limitations and pitfalls of emerging trends and topics within the field to help you identify what innovation has a lot of untapped potential or is too good to be true.
Now, HCD is a full-service research house which provides research capabilities on consumers by looking at how they perceive, evaluate, and respond to different types of stimuli, such as looking at product experiences, communications, or just general consumer and shopper experiences. We use a combination of tools that come from psychology, physiology, neuroscience, as well as the traditional methods that people typically use to see how they experience different stimuli. That stimuli can range from the early stages of exploration all the way through the final product validation tests. This is what we refer to as applied consumer neuroscience.
So stick around for more curious conversations as we chat our way through the ever-evolving space of consumer science. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of MindSet. Michelle and I are really excited today. We are joined with I believe, 3-time author of wonderful books that we're going to be talking about today. We are joined with Steve Yastrow. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kathryn and Michelle. It's great to be here with you.
Now, you have been a bit of a celebrity around HCD because we're in this weird space of market research where we kind of straddle both the marketing communications experience as well as the product experience in the research that we provide for clients. And so we see these two sides of the consumer experience, and it had us really talking about this idea of brand harmony. And so we started Googling, what is, do other people experience this disconnect that happens? And your name came up. And so we've been kind of like following you for years. I don't want to say stalking because it wasn't really stalking.
I'm okay with it.
Professional stalking.
Professional stalking.
There you go.
Fangirling a little bit to around this idea because was a really interesting concept to us. And we've gotten to know you recently, which is really great because that's the power of the internet, right? You can actually reach out to people and meet these people that you read about. And so this is very exciting to get to know you a little bit better. So with that, we'd like to launch right into who are you and what is your origin story? How did you become you?
How did I become me? It's a great question. It's interesting. I guess if I think way back, I was just this really curious, but also really social kid. I was really interested in so many things. Like in high school, I did 7 science classes over the 4 years. It means I liked my science class freshman year and did 2 each year. And I went to school. I was going to be a biologist, but I also liked music. I got really into music as a kid. And when I got to college, the music kind of took over. So I ended up majoring in music composition and philosophy, and then went back to business school after that. And, but I think those 2 characteristics are still with me. I'm really curious, always trying to find new things. And, I've focused a lot in my business work, which we'll get to, on, I think maybe because I'm such a social person, on the human interactions that happen in business fascinate me. And so I'm spent a lot of time now working on all aspects of the customer experience with a lot of focus on those human interactions that we have with our customers.
Really interesting. So you got your degree in music composition?
Music composition and philosophy at Indiana.
Okay.
Then I went off and worked a couple of years and liked working. And so I don't know anything about business. So I went back to business school and got an MBA. And then,
Where'd you get your MBA?
Northwestern.
Nice. So very Midwestern. Is that where you're located right now?
Yeah, I live in Chicago. I'm not in Chicago today, but I live in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. Been there my whole life. Except for we own an apartment in Jerusalem, so we spend some time there. But
wow.
other than that, I've been in Chicago my whole life from the Midwest. And yeah, so that's.
I gotta say, I did my PhD at Purdue, and I believe Indiana and Purdue have a little bit of a rivalry going on, but we can put that aside.
Yeah, and it's funny because I got invited to speak at Purdue a number of years ago, and to me it was fun. And I guess I'm not that much into rivalries, but so I'll go to Purdue happily and support.
Oh. Well, I also find it interesting that you really did bring a bit of your roots into all the business that you do, because I mean, the idea of brand harmony really does fit into a little nod to your background in music composition. Was that intentional or?
Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting because, so many people misunderstand the concept of harmony. It's like, oh, we all, it's like, it's really simple. Harmony is rich. I play a lot of jazz music. My avocation now is I'm a jazz musician. That's what I do when I'm my free time as much as I can. And it's like harmony is when the notes go together in a really complex, interesting way. Like when you're eating food and the spices are all interesting and create this complex overall flavor. And that to me is what brand harmony is about, is when your customer experience can have so many interesting aspects to it. The way they blend together, your customer just can feel it. They can just like feel what it's like to be your customer, the sales touch points and the service touch points and the product and all the inanimate objects like advertising and invoicing all come together to create this one blend that makes the customer just say, I get it. I know I want to.
And I love that analogy too, because I can appreciate what you're sharing, because I also am a musician. I play violin and viola, piano, and it's when you're in an orchestra, let's just say, not one instrument is more important than the other to get the entire song to sound amazing. So you need to make sure that everybody's doing their part and is kind of flowing together and to have that harmony. And I can see how that relates to any type of product experience or any type of consumer experience, because you want to make sure that they understand if somebody's flat or if something tastes wrong, they'll know, like whoever's listening or whoever's experiencing whatever you are performing, they'll understand and recognize, all right, the flutes need to tune up a little bit or something like that.
No, it's so interesting. You think of that metaphor. It's like, you're not just hearing violins and cellos and flutes and clarinets. You're hearing this when they blend well. You hear what you hear is the overall blend, right? You don't taste all the individual spices in the dish. You feel, you might be able to discern them when you pay attention, but it's this overall thing that's created. And that's what we've got to do with our customer experience, because the world is so crowded and our customers have so much going on. We can't just cut through the clutter of their lives by just shouting louder. Doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just cut through the clutter of their lives by having a better product, because they might not notice our product's better because they're looking at so many other things. They're just paying attention to how it all fits together.
So that's really interesting. And I wouldn't call myself a musician. I've played a lot of instruments in my life, various ones over the years, but I'm definitely not a musician anymore. But I really love that idea of playing into the harmonization and the understanding, because it's very easy for people to visualize. Mm-hmm. But when you were kind of coming up with this idea, it came from probably your experiences when you went into work, I take it. So what kind of work did you do when you kind of entered into the corporate landscape?
Sure. I can tell you, I can trace the epiphany that led to brand harmony. Like the moment where I said, there's something I don't understand here. I can trace that. I got out of business school and I started working in the travel industry. I got recruited by this really cool company. We were doing, putting together vacation programs around the world. It was fascinating. And I got noticed by Hyatt Hotels. They were a customer of ours. And so in my early 30s, they recruited me to be the vice president of resort marketing, which was really cool. I got to be in charge of marketing these resorts in Hawaii, the Caribbean, and some really beautiful sunny places in the continental US. It was great, but the business wasn't doing really well. Yeah. This is the early 90s, occupancy was down, rates were down. It was a tough time in the hotel business. They were having a hard time. So I commissioned a research study to try to understand, what do people think about us? Because I was looking at what are my problems. My problem was not my advertising budget. I inherited an advertising budget of tens of millions of dollars for 17 hotels. It was like ridiculous amount of money being spent on these hotels. And it was obviously not fixing the problems. So we did a study, and it included qualitative research and quantitative research to really understand what people think about Hyatt resorts. And there was one question that just flipped a switch for me. It just was like, actually, I say first, it like hit me over the head like a baseball bat, and then flipped the switch. It was like, there was this question on future purchase intent. We had two kinds of people in the study. There were people who were aware of Hyatt from all this expensive advertising we were doing, but had never been to a Hyatt resort. There were people who'd been to a Hyatt resort. They'd had the experience. And we had this one question, open-ended question: where are you going on your next vacation? And it was open-ended. They could have said anything. Yeah. I'm going camping. We're going to visit grandma, whatever. People who were aware but had never been to Hyatt, 6% of them said, I'm going to a Hyatt resort. And the people who had been to a Hyatt resort, where are you going on your next vacation? Not 6%, it was 69%. It was like, what? More than 2/3 of people said they'll go there the next time. Now, obviously, they wouldn't actually carry through on that, but its intent was like, I remember my realization was, wait a minute. All my work as the vice president of resort marketing for Hyatt was focused on this stuff that wasn't working. It was what a humbling experience. I'm the VP of marketing, and all the stuff I'm doing really isn't moving the needle. And I was in a meeting with a couple of guys from the Hyatt marketing department and somebody from our ad agency. I remember saying to them, we're looking at that one question on purchase intent. I said, we all think we're pretty good marketers, don't we? But who's better at marketing, us or the bellman and the front desk clerks and the guy that brings it? They're obviously doing a much better job than we are, aren't they? I mean, and even the architect who designed the hotel was like, it's the old, marketing myopia in a different way. It's like, we were thinking what we were doing really matters. And it's like, no. And my insight was that it's not that the advertising was bad. Mm-hmm. This is before social media. We launched, I worked on, did the first website for a major hotel company like a year later. So this was still when it was like really direct marketing, display advertising, PR. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just it wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. That customers' lives are so busy that they're paying attention to all the other touch points and how it all blends together. So that was the moment that said, okay, there's something different here. And, I started really focusing my efforts beyond just traditional marketing. And that sort of led to eventually writing a book called Brand Harmony and where we are today.
And why did you decide to write books as opposed to starting a blog or, just sharing it with different people?
Or keeping it within the company you worked at?
Right.
That's a really good question. It's like, what happened to me was I love working at Hyatt and had a really cool job, but I mentioned earlier, I'm curious, I'm social. I'm also like, love flexibility. Mm-hmm. And even though Hyatt was a cool company, I wanted to be in a more entrepreneurial atmosphere. I remember one year, my resort marketing team, we got the results. We really were getting results. I remember one of the hotels, we improved their gross profit by 88%. Not just us, but we were a big contributor to it. And I got my normal raise. I'm like, wait a minute. So I went off to work for a more entrepreneurial hotel company. And that resulted in a need to move my family, which I didn't want to do. So it was, okay, great. Age 37, 38, I started my own business and thought I could take these ideas I was working on and experiment with them with other companies, also help other companies with them. So I started my consulting business in 1997, and I've been doing that ever since. And part of that was books became one of the media to create my ideas. Most of it was just in working with people. I did a lot of public speaking, did a lot of writing, but also I found that books were just a good way to kind of summarize my ideas and just really were a nice catalyst for the business.
I love that. And I know we're really focusing on Brand Harmony, but I know you have two other books. Do they all focus around the same idea? Is there one unifying theme that you keep on expanding on, or are they different ideas or epiphanies that you've had?
Yeah, there's a definite progression. So Brand Harmony looks at how all of the experiences customers have with a company blend to tell one story. My little mantra is that if the brand harmony is strong and the message is something the customer cares about, the customer is going to have that moment of, I get it, I want it, I can't get anywhere else. I get it, meaning there's clarity. I want it, meaning it's meaningful to me and I can't get anywhere else, meaning it's different from other options. And so Brand Harmony creates that if you're doing a good job of orchestrating your customer experience where all the pieces come together to cut through the clutter, because the old model of brute force branding, you just can't cut through the clutter by just shouting louder. So Brand Harmony is what gets that to happen. So that's like the platform for me, is how every aspect of the customer experience blends together to tell one story. Now, all those touch points are important. What I found is that I started working with companies. There are lots of resources out there to help you with your advertising, now with your social media, with with other aspects of it, product development. Lots of companies like HCD would help you figure out if your product's working well, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Where I found there was a real void that was that the human interactions that people have with companies are really important. And even if you think about a big like a consumer goods company, you may think about somebody who's got a product that shows up at retail. Well, the consumers maybe don't always meet people at that company, but the buyers through the distribution channels do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And brand harmony is a B2B concept as much as a B2C concept, right? And so I found myself focusing a lot on the human interactions. And one thing that got me there was I started to notice in the research we were doing, a lot of interview-based qualitative research we're doing with our clients, customers, to try to determine why they preferred one company or another. What I began to notice, I mean, it's always there, but it began to be more acute, was that when people preferred one company over another, it more often had to do with the relationship they felt with that company than with the product or services. I think this is true, especially in the B2B world, and B2C too, especially in service industries, but definitely across the B2B world, is that relationships are often more differentiating than products or services, because the buyer isn't knowledgeable enough to always tell if this product is better than this product. Yeah. And I can't tell if, consumer example, I can't really tell if my dentist is better than the next dentist if I don't have pain, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell if I have a good relationship with that dentist.
Yeah. Right.
So my second book was called We, the Ideal Customer Relationship. And it's really about how within the whole constellation of touch points that create brand harmony, how do you make sure that your interactions with customers are relationship building? So
that's amazing. And I think that between those two books, it really focuses on the consumer, which is something that we have noticed as well. Mm-hmm. Originally, it used to be product centered. Everything was, how can we make this product as best as possible?
Well, particularly for the R&D product development side, I'd say the past, 100 years have really been about making the best product. So it's all about, all the consumer research is always centered on liking. Right. Mm-hmm. So how much do you like the product, or how good is it at performance at cleaning teeth? Right. So getting back to the dentist thing, but let's say we're talking about toothpaste. It's like, how effective is it? Did it do what it was supposed to do? But that doesn't really get back to the question of why you buy Crest as opposed to Colgate. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
Totally. And why do you go to this restaurant versus that restaurant? Or why exactly? And what it is that product, it's like two things that now are kind of like, customers expect is product quality and customer service. Those are the prices of entry now, right?
Yeah.
How do we differentiate ourselves? We differentiate ourselves by creating an overall experience that makes the customer think this is right for me. Because people don't buy products because of what the product does. They buy a product because of what it does for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And the richer the experience, the more likely it is they're going to connect it to what it does for them. You talk about it being focused on the customer within brand harmony, because it's been 19 years since the first edition of Brand Harmony came out, and I've teach it a lot now and I consult with it. And some of the key principles that are in the book that have even been more developed now is the idea that your brand is not what you say you are. It's what your customers think you are. Yeah. And you don't create your business results, your customers do. Think about it. No cash registers in the corporate office. The idea is when you create a real sense of brand harmony, customers then have those brand beliefs about you that motivate them to act in ways that drive your results. So it's all about the customer's power. And then if I can follow up on your question, the third book is called Ditch the Pitch. It's brand harmony is the whole basis of all customer experience. Then We, the Ideal Customer Relationship, was about all the human interactions. Ditch the Pitch then sort of goes one step further to say, okay, a huge part of the whole constellation of touch points to make up brand harmony are the sales touch points when we're trying to persuade somebody to do things. And sales pitches are just like, mass advertising. It's like, let me tell you my thing and hope you like it. The pitch is about tearing up your script and having a conversation that matters with the customer, so you can create a brand story that's unique for this customer. Take everything about your brand that's wonderful, but make sure that you're communicating in a way that make this customer go, I get it. I want it. I can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So brand harmony is still my foundation, and my other books sort of layer on top of it with more of the human side of it. But my consulting work right now, we work as much on the overall customer experience beyond the human too, but that's for my
So what do you do within your consulting work? You come into a company, and is it really about how their inner workings are? Or I think I heard you talk about how you sort of diagnose what's going on with their maybe products or their brand or whatever it might be?
Yeah, it's like, it varies. And I have the luxury of having a small, more nimble company, so we can really adapt to what opportunities we want to pursue. But typically what happens when I go into companies, we're looking for where are the opportunities we can help them with. And so, like, for example, I just, before we were on this today, I just was on a workshop with a medical equipment company we work with. And we spent the last couple of months, we looked at their overall customer experience, got together with a number of their people, and we sort of mapped out, this was at a pretty high level. We often dig in deeper, but this company went at a pretty high level, saying, what's going on as you're trying to attract people, make the first sale, onboard them, and then service them on there. We found a number of opportunities to improve their customer experience, improve the brand harmony. So the company's now started working on them. We then did a workshop with their entire company to get everybody to understand it. And then today I just took all their customer facing people, salespeople, support people, technical people, trainers and training on the equipment, and put them through a Ditch the Pitch workshop that layers on top of what we've already done with them. And now they're going to spend the next 6-7 weeks going through a practice program. We got an online practice program to practice Ditch the Pitch, learning that. So here's an example of a company. We're doing a broad focus on brand harmony to help them improve the overall customer experience, and zeroing in their customer facing team, people who are working with the doctors and people in the medical practices, to make sure those interactions are highly differentiating.
I find it interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, especially with what you're sharing with the Ditch the Pitch idea. The pitch is really all encompassing of what brand harmony is, because if you have, everyone thinks of the pitch as just sharing and like kind of giving them, the first impression of what it is. But that first impression involves all the sensory experiences, and it involves the messaging, and it involves what it's like to be
the emotions that you get from the brand. Like
exactly. And so all of that fits into the pitch, the consumer experience, really, especially their first time, maybe it's their first time trying a product. That itself is the pitch. It's their trial run to see, is this an experience that I like, that I want to continue investing in and continue bringing into my own lifestyle?
Mm-hmm.
It gets to a key point, which is that marketing and sales aren't what we think it is. It's what the customer thinks it is. They can evaluate you on anything, like that first impression.
Yeah.
That may be more powerful than any marketing experience they've had. And that's just reality.
Which is kind of why, like, the reason we ended up identifying with this concept of brand harmony is because, having worked on both sides, testing the marketing and testing the product, we noticed that there's a divide, that a lot of companies work in silos, right? So you have your marketing team doing their marketing thing, and that they're getting more of the money, right, to do advertising. And then the product team is developing to spec, right? They're creating the actual consumer experience, but these two teams don't always talk to each other. And what we know from like the food industry, so I come from sensory in the food industry, what we know is that like 80 to 90% of all new market introductions fail, and within like 6 months. And what we know from research on consumer research is that it is necessarily about liking, it's about expectation, right? So most of the research says that when consumer expectations are not met, then they don't like the product, they will not repurchase. And it's not that first purchase that you want, you actually want the second purchase, right? Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting, that question you were asking people, where's your next trip? That's similar to our surveys. We always like to ask, would you buy this product? Would you want more of the, if we give them yogurt, would you eat more of this? I think it's a really interesting projective sort of question. But it's the important one, because that's what's actually going to get you sales and performance. But what the problem we saw is that marketing will pull the funds, right? If they don't get that first, if people aren't repurchasing it. But the disconnect might actually be because what was promised in advertising and promised in marketing campaigns is not what the consumer experience is. So even if the product itself is amazing, if it doesn't meet the expectations of what they were expecting from the brand, they're not going to like it and they're not going to purchase again.
I think you raise a really important point. The advertising marketing might be good. The product might be good too. But the question is, are they resonating with each other?
Right.
Yeah.
Because people are so busy. I mean, we are bombarded with noise. We live in the busiest, most distracting time in the history of the human race, right? And it's not just the 147 emails we all got today, but it's the thousands of marketing messages that have. So how do we cut through the clutter when those things resonate? You can have a great ad, a great trade show booth, a great whatever, a great PR, a great product. But if it doesn't all blend and fit like a puzzle piece to create one story, then you're lost in the noise of your customer's life. And which gets to an interesting point you mentioned is that because companies are set up in silos, we don't always end up, our internal workings don't match the way the customer is going to best perceive us.
Right.
Yeah. We don't experience the product in a vacuum. We experience it with all the baggage we have from what we think about the brand. Right. So, it's funny. An example I give for the R&D side, for the product development side has always been, when you go to pick out a shampoo, people tend to crack the lid and smell it. Right. And it was very much like that point that you brought up is this for me? So they crack open the lid and they smell it right there in the grocery store, right there in CVS. Is this how I want to smell? Is it who I want to project? But the thing we often bring up to our clients and in different, talks that we give, et cetera, is that, okay, so let's see you're in the shampoo aisle, you see this bottle, it's green, it has pictures of fruit on it. The name is Fructis. You crack open the lid, you take a sniff and it smells like birthday cake. So it has like a vanilla smell,
That's not brand harmony. That's not brand harmony.
No,
right?
not at all. And it's actually going to, even if you love the smell of vanilla, you'll actually rank it as being you don't like it. And you're not going to pick it up because, well, this doesn't match my perception,
Right.
We abhor cognitive dissonance. It's just natural, right? Yeah. And you make the great point. So you take that example of cracking open the shampoo bottles that smell well, and what an instructive example to think about any business anywhere. Yeah. Does the checkout experience in the store match the experience in the aisle? Does the invoicing it's like all those things, those little cues. And like I said earlier, marketing is what our customers think it is. They get to decide how they want to evaluate us. We don't get to decide.
Right.
And so we got to make sure that all those touch points are covered. And they got your point about the birthday cake and the fruit it's got to match. Doesn't match.
So what do you say if people come to you and they say, well, how do I control what other people think about me or think about my brand or my company? What would you tell them to do? And like, what kind of strategies would you recommend? I know you mentioned those check-ins, but what would you recommend to them if they say, I don't know how to control this narrative?
Well, it's a really interesting point because one of the things we need to realize is that, like I have a line in my book, Brand Harmony, I say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them think. We can't tell people what to think. It's part of the pitch too. You can't tell people what to think. What you can do is lead them to the point where they can think for themselves. And so what I always like to think about is that if you recognize your brand is not what you say you are, it's what your customer thinks you are. The first step is saying, great, let's stop thinking of branding like being a sculptor who creates a statue and puts it in the town square and expects it to be the same in 200 years. Your brand changes every time a customer comes in contact with you because they can decide what to think about you. So that first humbling experience of saying, controlling our brand is hard because the customer gets to decide. So now, okay, let's be really, really deliberate. What I like to start out with is this. Like I said, your customer experience, the brand harmony, creates customer beliefs, which leads to customer action, which leads to business results. So the first most important branding question you've got to ask isn't what do we want to say or what is our logo? That's okay. Put that off for a month, 3 months, whatever. The first most important branding question you got to answer right now is this. What do we want our customers to believe about us? That if they believed it, they would act in ways that drive our results. So if you start with that, and then you go through the work of clarifying that, to me, to clarify a brand story is to say what those beliefs are. And by the way, we always start every time we start in the customer's words. We start with what do we want customers to believe? And then we figure out what we're going to do. Because once you know what your customers believe, what you want your customers to believe, those desired brand impressions, then you can construct the customer experience, the brand harmony to fulfill those needs. What's happening in a lot of companies, because people are in silos, it's like, this is what product development's doing. This is what marketing's doing. This is what whatever. And you got to stop and say, okay, what's it going to be like from the customer's point of view to come together in brand harmony? So if you start out with, this is what we want customers to think, like I like to work interdisciplinary with my clients across multiple departments, say, how does what you do affect what they do, affect what they do? We're working with a produce company now, and they plant, they grow, they cultivate, they ship, they sell to, and it ends up on your kitchen table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've looked out there, part of the brand harmony there is this whole chain of events. So we're working throughout the organization to look at how everything each former silo, not silo anymore, does to add up to, by the time it gets to your table, it's a wonderful experience, or gets to the produce department, it's a wonderful experience for the produce buyer. Yeah. And we have to break through those silos. And that's the problem. Customers are, it's hard to get them to believe in us, but the bigger problem usually isn't them. It's usually the way the companies are presenting themselves.
Yeah.
The way companies, the silos prevent us from creating a unified customer experience of brand harmony.
Yeah, I think similar to that idea, is if you think about a company that's changing its persona, right? So, we talk about Volvo as being an example where when you think about Volvo and if you were to ask people, they would say, oh, it's a safe car. It's a safe, right, reliable car. But they had some ads that came out a few years ago that was all about how adventurous and sporty they were. And that's not really brand harmony, right? And it's not that you can't change your persona. Buick's doing a good job of it, trying to be more modern, right?
Sure, yeah.
But you do have to pay attention to what consumers already think about you and how far you can actually take them into a change. Like you can modernize Buick, but can you change a safe, reliable car to be exactly the opposite,
It's such a great example because, I don't know, none of us were in the meetings at Volvo with their advisors, but it's like, my experience would tell me, so I'm not picking on Volvo to say this, is that having seen lots of companies, it's the campaign mentality. Well, we did that, we got to do something new. Mm-hmm. And sure, you can evolve your brand persona, of course, but you got to be strategic, intentional, and thoughtful in how you do it. And so often it's like companies get tired of their own things without realizing, well, you think about it all day. Your customer doesn't think about that much. Yeah. And Buick's a good example of involving it. They've been very strategic, thoughtful, and intentional. Yeah. Maybe Volvo was, I don't know, but my guess is, having seen lots of companies, there's a good chance that they weren't, or that, and if anybody from Volvo hears this, sorry, but it's still instructive because there's a lot of companies who do that. Yeah. Companies, if there's a problem with your brand harmony, there's a problem with the way competitors are, it's usually not, the biggest factor is inside your own company, not in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with that being said, I'm curious, do you have any predictions about where you think the relationship is going between the consumer and companies?
Because how we communicate has changed so much, right? You don't have a 30-second spot anymore because nobody watches commercials, right? So the way we communicate our brands is evolving.
It's so interesting because I think back to business school and I was getting out of there, and this is the 80s, and being told, like, if you want to really learn marketing, Steve, go to the consumer goods companies because they really know marketing. And then I went to the travel industry, ended up in the hotel business. And I realized at one point, it's like, maybe the reason it was better marketing is there were fewer touch points in consumer goods then. And, hotel business, we had zillions of touch points. If a waiter looked at you with a frown, it's like, that's a touch point I couldn't control. Right? But now, if you think now to where we are today, those consumer goods companies that maybe could control the touch points with the packaging and the advertising and the end cap in the store and all that, they've now got to contend with a zillion touch points too, because there's so many more out there. And so I think the ask for predictions is to recognize that we are in a world where our customers touch us at many points. They have so many sources of information that we didn't even create.
Right.
There's so many touch points out there, and your competitors are also really good at creating lots of different ways to communicate that brand harmony really is recognizing that every aspect of the customer experience counts, but it's just there's more aspects of customer experience than there ever was. Think about the whole idea of UX, right? Okay. Companies in the past who just had their packaging and their end cap and their whatever, they now got our website, and they got UX designers thinking about how the whole experience of the website. Well, brand harmony is really UX beyond the website. It's UX for your whole experience. Yeah. And I think that's what I'd say is recognize that it's only going to get more acute. We're going to have more touch points, more moving parts in our businesses. And so if inside our companies, we're still thinking of the silos and not communicating, and this person pools the funds and doesn't allow it for this and whatever. And they say they pull the funds, but they also pool the funds. It's like, and you don't have a flexibility in how you create your customer experience, you're not going to be ready for what's happening, because it's only going to, I mean, it's only going to be more acute, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I think, we're definitely noticing that not only are you going to have to find newer ways to communicate, but also just managing all those communication points, those touch points, lest they become pain points, right? Because, now we have social media where you don't have any control over what people are saying. There's TikToks out there that aren't sponsored, that aren't spokespeople. So really understanding what's going on with your brand out there in the ether, right?
It's a really important point. In brand harmony, we define that a customer is anyone whose actions can affect your results. Mm-hmm. Customer experience, brand harmony leads to customer beliefs, leads to customer action, leads to results. And so when we work with our clients and when I teach brand harmony, those social media influencers out there who you never met them, they're your customers. They may never write you a check, but their behavior affects your results. You've got to think about, okay, what experience am I creating for them? So when you think of the customer beyond the paying customer to anybody who can affect your results, you got to say, what am I doing? Your vendors. With a lot of my clients, it's like they never thought of their vendors as customers, but now in this time of tight supply, I work with my clients on what kind of brand harmony you're creating for your vendors.
Oh, yeah.
For your referral sources. It's only going to get more complex. And which gets to your point about the silos, is that because most corporations, especially as they get bigger, are not set up to interact with their customers in a way that's right for the customers, brand harmony. They've got their silos. As I said, I've written 3 books. The concept I've started working on now is called the competitor in the mirror. Think what that means. We're our own worst competitors. You look at most companies out there saying, we can't succeed because our competition's trashing the market, or this government regulation, or the economy. Sure, those things count, but what's a bigger variance than those outside things? Go look in the mirror, because most companies are in their own way of doing things they need to do to create this unified customer experience that makes customers say, I get it, I want it, and I can't get it anymore.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Well, I really appreciate this time. I think that we could probably talk forever, and we'll probably even have to have maybe another future discussion. But, I think we do have to wrap it up for today and think about what we want to talk about next time. Before we close out this, we're going to do our little game, the React Attack free association game, if you're game to play.
Sure, let's see what happens.
Awesome. So I have the 10 words ready for you. I'm just going to say the word to you, and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. No worries about what it is. It doesn't have to be.
Don't worry. Yeah, we can bleep it out if it's bad. Okay.
Are you ready to begin the game?
Sure, definitely. I'm game.
All right. Customer experience.
Unified.
Slogans.
Don't count on them.
Branding.
Your customer controls it.
Impressions.
Customer controls it.
Music theory.
Guides you.
Trust.
Relationships.
Attitudes.
Cultivate them.
Success.
It's here now.
Competition.
Don't worry about it too much.
And the final word, hotels.
I'd rather be home.
So where's your next vacation?
Well, I'm visiting my parents now. I'm in Phoenix visiting my parents, and then we're going to be taking a trip. My wife's family's had a summer house for nearly 100 years in Southwest Michigan, and I get to go there with my 3 grandchildren, my wife and son-in-law as soon as we get back. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. We won't tell Hyatt that you said you'd rather be home. Leave that part out.
It's only because I've been traveling so much. I love travel. I'm a big traveler, and it's just that I've been on the road a lot lately, and it's going to be nice to get back to my own bed.
Of course. Yeah. There's no place like home, right?
There's no place like home. Yeah, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, what is the best way that they can reach out to you? And also just, share what you have going on?
Sure. Well, our website is just yastrow.com, YASTROW. There's a W on the end. And my email, I got one of those really easy emails. My name, steve@yastrow.com. And I love hearing from people. It's like, so what if I get a bunch of emails? I'll deal with it. So if anyone wants to talk to me, just write me at steve@yastrow.com. And I'd be happy to, if possible, to get back in touch.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us. And until next time, take care.
See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
For more information or updates, follow HCD Research on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at HCD Research Inc. and at HCD Neuroscience. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to rate, review, and follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, and stay tuned for more curious conversations.